Hello everyone, this is part 4th of the first lecture. In this lecture, we will talk about philosophy and various philosophical ideas that are relevant for our understanding of our constitution. Now, for the better understanding of the ideas which are the basis of our constitution, which govern and guide our constitution, we should unconditionally enter the realm of philosophy. Our constitution and the rights or liberties and duties which are mentioned in our constitution, along with the idea of peaceful and free society, these all are the products of philosophy. These philosophical ideas are the products of thinkers and wanderers who thought of greater good and individual good, who thought beyond the materialistic wants and needs, who pondered as to why are there conflicts and what are the solutions to it. Solutions to human misery. They pondered, they thought about ways to create an order in the society that would enable an individual to live the life to the fullest. Now, these philosophical ideas form the very fabric of our constitution. Now, what do I mean when I say the fabric of our constitution? For example, cotton is a fiber. Similarly, silk, and let us say wool. These are fibers out of which fabric or the cloth is made. This cloth is also known as fabric. Now, these all fibers have their different characteristics, their different features. Cotton has a very different feature. It is different from silk. Silk has a very different features. Similarly, wool has its own characteristics. The fabric made out of these are distinct, are different from the fabric made out of the other ones. To keep it simple, the fabric has the characteristic of the basic fiber that it is made of. And similarly, when we mix all of these fibers together and we get a fabric, a very different cloth, this cloth will have the characteristics which are very different from these individual fabrics. After mixing all of these three fibers, the fabric that we get has the characteristics of all of these separate fibers. Cotton gives this fabric breathability, breathable. Silk gives shine or glare. Wool gives warmth. So you can see the mixture when we combine these fibers together and we obtain a fabric, we get these characteristics. And when a dress is tailored out of this fabric, it will have the characteristics, the features of all of these fibers. Although you can't see the fibers separately or individually inside the fabric, it is very hard to see. But when you wear the dress, you can see the features of the combination of these fibers in action. Similarly, ideas are like these fibers. If these are the ideas, the combination of all of these ideas and the fabric made out of it, or the rules and regulations which are derived from these ideas, will have the features and characteristics of these individual ideas. And out of this fabric, if you make a dress, you make a document which consists of rules and regulations which govern the daily life of the citizens of a country. You will see the working of these ideas. You will see the ideas in action. You will be able to figure out that your constitution has provisions, has articles, even though the ideas are not mentioned explicitly or are not directly visible. But when you see the constitution in working, you will see that these ideas are the basics and fundamentals which govern this document or the constitution of India. This is what I mean when I say that these ideas form the very fabric of our constitution. These ideas are present everywhere. These ideas dominate and guide various provisions and various articles of the Constitution. These ideas were the guiding principles behind the thinking of our Constitution makers. And therefore, it is very important, almost indisposable, to have a good grasp of these ideas and to understand them as fibers before trying to understand the nature of the dress which is made out of these fibers. I hope that you understand what I mean to say. So let us proceed further. Now, philosophy, in very simple terms, is made out of two words: philo, sophy. Philo means love, sophy means wisdom. So, very simply, philosophy means love for wisdom. The word philosophy does not only suggest that the philosopher is curious about the wisdom or that he is in search of the wisdom, but there is a romantic aspect of it. Philosopher is not aiming to achieve the wisdom and to use it, but here he pursues it, he admires it because he loves it, he likes it, he adores it. Along with this, the philosopher thinks beyond, or we can say he is concerned beyond the materialistic and physical relations of something and its effects. So let us take an example. Let us say that you are a car driver. You are a car driver. You get salary out of your job. Driving a car is your job, you get a salary. And you use this salary to fulfill the materialistic needs. What are the materialistic needs? Let us say food and shelter, clothing, and transport. And you have hospital bills, so your health. And along with this, the needs of your family, materialistic needs of your family, their dresses, their food, and their needs. So, in simple terms, your car is a means or a materialistic tool to achieve all of these aims. And these are materialistic aims, physical aims. But when you start to focus on the aspects other than these materialistic needs, let us say like status in the society, peace of your mind, do you get peace? Are you having some personal development, personal character development? When you start to question that what meaning does this car give to your life, or whether this car has brought happiness to your life, whether this job has brought happiness to your life, how has driving a car changed your perspective towards the world, how this job of driving a car has led you to look at the world, at the other people differently. And this is where you have started thinking beyond these materialistic and physical relations or these materialistic and physical effects of something. And this is where you step into the realm of philosophy. Now, before proceeding further and understanding this philosophy in depth, let us understand the components, the words like wisdom, and understand what wisdom is. Over the centuries, many different philosophers, different thinkers, different writers have described the word wisdom in different ways. I will describe the way that I understood. So, in my opinion, wisdom is knowledge coupled with experience and a better understanding of that knowledge. An understanding of when, where, and how to use this knowledge, and also knowing the limitations of that knowledge. To be able to understand how this knowledge works and why it works. And this can only be learned by experience. Now, experience vary. That is, the experiences are different for different people. They are not never the same for everyone, for every individual. they are different. This tells us very important thing about the experience or about the wisdom, that wisdom is not limited. It is not absolute. It is not absolute. Different people can have different wisdom, and also that wisdom has unlimited expanse. And because the wisdom is not absolute, different people may have different wisdom because their experiences were different. Therefore, it is not possible to compare wisdom of one person with the wisdom of another. There is always someone who has had a very different experience of the same thing or of the same event or the same incident, and therefore his wisdom is different. For much clearer understanding, let us look at a story of a man named Amit. Amit used to live in a village. This village was green. It was surrounded by forests. There was always greenery. There were several ponds, several lakes. And he used to live in this village. Also, everyone in the village owns a horse. So Amit also owned a horse. Now, because of some reason, one day Amit had to travel far for some work to somewhere. He has to travel far. He takes the horse and leaves the village. Riding the horse, he reaches a desert. Now, for his work, Amit needs to cross this desert. Amit has never seen a desert in his lifetime. He knows nothing about this desert. He has no knowledge about the desert. But ultimately, he has to reach the other side, so he rides the horse and tries to cross this desert. Now, the desert is hot and the sand is slowing down the horse. The horse starts to struggle. The heat is making the horse thirsty. It is also making Amit thirsty. After a little while, the horse is unable to walk anymore. It sits down. Now, the desert is very different from the village where Amit lives. In his village, there are lakes, there are streams, there are rivers. So, expecting the same in the desert, he goes on a search for water. But there are rarely any lakes or rivers in the desert. He tries to wander around and search for rivers or a lake or any water body. And because of this walking in the heat, he becomes thirsty. He himself becomes exhausted. And now he is not able to walk further. He falls on the sand. In a while, a group of Karava travelers who happen to be crossing the same road notice Amit laying down on the sand. They realize that the man might be exhausted of heat and they offer him some water. Amit looks at these travelers and notices that these travelers are riding bunch of animals. These animals are camels. The caravan travelers are riding camels. Amit in his lifetime has never seen camel. Now out of curiosity he asks these travelers about the camels. He tells that his horse was exhausted in this heat, and are these animals not exhausted without water? The travelers explain to him that the camels can store a lot of water in their body and therefore they are very efficient in desert. The travelers can ride these camels for a long way. Travelers take Amit to their own village, which is in desert. So along with the caravan travelers, Amit goes to their village. He rests there, and after regaining his strength, he decides to return. And also he decides to buy one of the camels. And after buying the camel, he rides this camel back towards his horse. But halfway through, he realizes that the camel was getting thirsty. The camel himself was getting exhausted. So, out of suspicion, he returns to the traveler's village. He thinks that he has been cheated by these Karma travelers. Upon reaching the village, he tries to find out that particular person from whom he bought this camel, but he is not able to find him. After getting tired of trying to find him, he gives up and he feeds camel with water in a nearby tank. He sees that the camel has emptied a significant portion of the tank in few minutes. Now after this, he once again tries to return to his horse, riding the camel. Now this time he realizes that the camel is not getting exhausted. It is not getting thirsty. The camel is having no problem in the desert. And upon reaching his horse, he finds out that his horse is dead because of the exhaustion. Amit returns to his village safely with the camel. From now on, Amit rides this camel whenever he had to travel in desert. And before starting the journey, he always feeds the camel with enough water. He takes the camel to a tank and provides enough water to the camel. And then he starts for the journey whenever he has to cross the desert. Now there is one more person in the village who watches Amit every time when he is taking camel to the desert to cross the desert. This man has also tried to cross the desert but has never been able to because of the high temperatures, the heat and the sand. He has also lost his horse in the desert. Now this man sees Amit riding camel every time Amit wants to cross the desert. So on one night, he steals Amit's camel. He steals this camel and he tries to cross the desert. Now halfway through the desert, it was already daytime, it was already noon, and the camel starts to get exhausted and thirsty. Now this man thinks that he has seen Amit riding this camel and crossing the desert. He knows that Amit always uses this camel to cross the desert. So he ignores this sign and continues riding the camel. After a while, the camel stops and it is tired. Camel doesn't move. Now this man, who is unable to travel alone without the camel, waits for the camel to start walking again. He also gives little bit of water what was left with him to the camel, but it doesn't help. Now this time this man also tries to search for water, wanders around, tries to find a lake or some water body, but he fails to find any water body. Now previously it was Amit and this time it is this man. The next day the same travelers found this man dead in the desert. They also found Amit's camel in the desert, exhausted. So these travelers took the camel to their own village, fed it enough water, and that is the end of the story. Now there are three things to note, three elements to note in this story. The first thing is knowledge. Now what is knowledge here? The knowledge was that the camel can travel in desert, but horse cannot. And this is the knowledge which this man borrowed from Amit. He borrowed this knowledge that Amit was able to take camel, to use camel to cross the desert. So camels can travel in desert, where horse cannot. Now there is something which Amit had. He had experienced. What did he experience? He experienced that the camels drink a lot of water. And he also knew that the Karama travelers told him that these camels can store this water in their body. So, storage. They can store it in their body. Now, because of this experience, Amit gained a wisdom. The wisdom was that always feed the camel enough water before the journey. Before the journey. And he had experienced this. Once, when he bought the camel and tried to find the horse, he saw the camel was struggling. He went back to the traveler's village, trying to find out the traveler, thinking that he has been cheated. But he sees the camel drinking enough water and then he rides the camel back. And this time he notices that camel is not getting tired. So he gets the wisdom out of his experience. He sets a rule for himself. He understands that the camel should always be fed enough water before any journey. He doesn't know the scientific reason behind it. Why does this happen? But from his experience, he understood this. And now, what is the wisdom for us? What can we conclude as the wisdom? For us, the wisdom here, because we have experienced this story, wisdom for us. This was wisdom for Amit. A wisdom for us. We can conclude two things: that camels are good in desert and horses in grasslands or where there is enough greenery and water available. Second thing, we can also conclude that efficiency is subjective, depends upon the situation. The efficiency of someone, the ability of someone, the usefulness of someone depends upon the situation. So the efficiency is subjective, depends upon the situation. So there is something very interesting to learn from this story. This story tells that the philosophy is therefore a condition where the person widens his perception, broadens his mind, and starts to look at things differently because of something that he has experienced. And more than the knowledge which the other man also had, but more than the knowledge, he got the understanding, some understanding in his own level about that knowledge. He experienced something about that knowledge. And on the basis of this experience, he formed an opinion. And that opinion is wisdom. The knowledge that you have received from some other person, the other man received this knowledge from Amit, is not wisdom, because this knowledge has not been combined with the experience. But when you have experienced, as the result of that experience, you have started to think about that particular knowledge, and you now know, now you understand why that knowledge works, when it works, and why it works. What are the limitations? And because of this experience, you have formed an opinion, you have formed a view, and this view you have developed by yourself, or this was your observation. So we have seen that the philosophy has some basis, one of which is widening of perception. Your perception, your way of looking at something has widened. You have started to look at bigger picture. You have broadened your thoughts. You are not just stuck to whatever you know. Your experience has led you to be able to find the limitations of that knowledge, something, a better understanding of that knowledge. You also need some amount of courage to be able to break the shackles of the beliefs that you already have and question your own beliefs and then question your knowledge, which also means that you are not limiting yourself with the arrogance that you know something. This arrogance is not able to stop you from trying to discover further or question yourself. Questioning yourself is just the opposite of arrogance. Along with these features, a philosopher also loves to think, loves to ponder, loves to dive deep into thoughts. He is curious. He is always curious. He wants to know more. He loves it. He adores the search for wisdom. He loves to search for wisdom. Now, all of these have one basic requirement, which is honesty. If you are not honest with what you felt, or what you saw, or what you experienced, or that you have not accepted your own experience, in that case, you will never develop the curiosity to know, to know why you experienced what you experienced. Why did you experience what you experienced? The curiosity is that you experience something and then you are thinking, you want to know why did you experience that. Now, honesty always loves truth. Honesty always loves truth. And therefore, naturally, the main aim of a philosopher becomes the truth. The philosopher aims for truth. He wants to know the truth. Philosophers seek the truth, which is a result of them being honest and open to new ideas, even if these ideas challenge their beliefs. But these philosophers have the courage to be able to break the shackles of these beliefs and question their own beliefs. Now, all of these traits, all of these features are very hard to find in some individual. A person can have few of these. He can have a broad thought process. Let us say he also loves to ponder. He also is honest, but maybe he is not courageous enough. Maybe he doesn't have the curiosity. Or on the contrary, he has the courage, but he is not honest. He doesn't have the ability to widen his perception. He loves to ponder. He has the courage, but he is not honest with himself. He doesn't accept what he has seen, but he is curious. And therefore, to have all of these qualities together for someone is very hard and very rare. Therefore, over the time, there have been many philosophers who became a victim of their own idea. Maybe they were able to frame an opinion because of whatever they experienced. They got an idea, they developed an idea, but now they are not able to question their own opinion. They are not questioning their own opinion because they are so arrogant, they are stubborn, they are adamant. They are not open to accept any challenge. They don't want to accept any challenge that is poised to their own opinion. Such philosophers are not true philosophers. These philosophers are not true philosophers. A true philosopher has all of these traits. A philosopher who lacks few of these traits is not a true philosopher. Some philosophers are bound by religious beliefs. They believe in some religion and they are bound by it. They are not able to break the shackles of their own religious beliefs. Therefore, they cannot accept any experience, any new experience. They are not ready to accept, even if the truth presents itself, because that truth or that experience has challenged their own religion or their own religious belief. They are also not the true philosophers. And therefore, these are the very basics of philosophy. If you find some person who loves wisdom, he needs to have these traits, without which he is no philosopher. One of the things that form the very core of philosophy, and its aim is an individual's judgment about right or wrong, whether an action is right or wrong. The question is to whether a conduct or a behavior is right or wrong. This forms a very important part of most of the theories in philosophy. Now, good or bad or right or wrong are subjective. Now, what do I mean when I say subjective? This means that either something is wrong or right depends upon the situation or time or place or the environment. A person thinks or views something as right or wrong. His judgment depends upon the prevailing situation, the time, the place he is in, or the environment within which he is. Something considered right in one society could be considered wrong in some other society. The same thing, the same act, or the same behavior, which is right in one kind of society, may be considered wrong in the other kind of society. Something considered good in this society can be considered wrong or evil in some other society. Similarly, something considered right at one point of time for the same person, he might also think the same thing wrong when the time changes. For the same person, the person is the same. He thinks of something, some act, or some action, or some deed as a right deed. But because the time has changed, he considered that deed wrong. And therefore, different people look at the same thing in different ways. Now, for example, stealing is wrong, is considered wrong. This is just an example. So, stealing is considered wrong in majority of places and countries. But you have seen an example of Robin Hood. He used to steal from the rich and give it to the poor. Now, here people don't consider this act or this deed of Robin Hood wrong. So, it is the situation that has changed. So, because the situation is different, the wrong becomes right. And as I have told you, different people have different opinions. Some people who consider this a right deed or a good deed will form a part of the society. There are other people who might still call this deed or this action by Robin Hood as a wrong action. Here the people are considering it right deed because because they think that rich were oppressive. They are tyrannical. Robin Hood did the wrong thing to the wrongdoers, which means he stole from the rich, gave it to the poor. Therefore, ultimately, he did the right thing, or he did a very good thing. Yet others may still say he is wrong because stealing is ultimately wrong. They may argue that stealing is wrong and therefore choosing a wrong path to fight a wrongdoer, to fight a wrongdoer or wrong person does not make you a good person or does not justify your action. These people may still say that Robin Hood should have chosen a right path, should have sought for justice through authorities. They would argue that killing a killer will also make you a killer or a murderer. And you also might have came across this ongoing debate in the society till today. Such debates divide people's opinions. So they consider something right or wrong based on their own perspective. But now this brings us to a great question that if right and wrong are subjective, then how are some philosophers respected for their ideas on right or wrong almost everywhere? And whenever people find it hard To judge between whether something is right or wrong or good or evil, people seek the ideas which are presented by these philosophers almost in every situation, most of the time. So, later in this lecture, we will find the answer to this question where we will see how there are some common ideas about right or wrong or good or evil across various cultures. Doesn't matter what culture you belong to, what religion you follow, or what nation you live in, what kind of society you are in, what race do you belong to. There are some ideas which are very common to all these cultures or all these religions, nations, societies. And there are few philosophers who support these ideas. There are philosophers who develop these common ideas and these common opinions of the people, regardless of where they live and what time they lived. And that is why these philosophers supported or guided people with these common ideas are respected in the society. That is why these philosophers are revered, are respected, are sought after, and their ideas are looked as guiding principles in almost every society in the world or every nation in the world. I say almost because there are always exceptions. But for now, let us stand with this idea that today the majority of people in the world think that anyone who intentionally hurts other is a bad person. Let us say this is one of the common ideas that hurting someone is bad. Very common ideas, and it is believed all over the world. Similarly, behaving rude to a good person is wrong, or greed is evil, arrogance is bad, greed is bad, arrogance is bad, humility is a value. In most of the culture, most of the religion, humility is known as a great value. Good people feel pain when they see someone hurt. This is also a common idea. And such ideas, when they are supported by the philosophers, so these philosophers are respected in the society because they are writing for the common cause. The aim is same. Aim is the betterment of the society. And these philosophers who support such ideas are known as good philosophers. And they gain respect in the society. Now, for our subject, we should focus on laws and politics and the rights of people. Therefore, we would talk more about the philosophers who talked or who advocated for the rights of individuals and wrote against the tyranny. And they talked about freedom, equal status of everyone, regardless of what gender or color or race someone is. And because majority of population in history has suffered under some tyrannical ruler or corrupt administration or injustice, so the majority of the population have respected such good philosophers who stood against the evil of the society, the evil in the governance, corrupt rulers, tyrannical rulers. And when these good philosophers wrote and spread ideas against these evils, they became famous. And we will consider them as good philosophers. So, for us, the philosophers who supported the ideas related to laws and rules and governance, who talked about rights for people, basic rights, who stood against the evil in the governance or in the government, who stood against tyrannical rulers, and such other features. For us, we will look at them as good philosophers. Now, apart from presenting and spreading these ideas, these philosophers also justified these ideas. They justified these ideas using whatever was mostly believed to be either supreme or most powerful or almighty at that time or at that place, which could be either religion or nature, they could be natural events, or social incidents or religious texts or the nature itself. So let us take an example. Let us say that there is an insect. Now the insect is eaten by a frog and the frog is eaten by a snake. The snake is eaten by a mongoose and the mongoose is eaten by a jackal, which is in turn eaten by a leopard. Now the leopard gets a bacterial disease. Let us say it gets tuberculosis. Now humans can cure tuberculosis. So humans have cured tuberculosis. The bacteria was killed by humans. Now let us say that a human is killed by a snake bite. You can conclude few points out of this example. You can say that size and strength are not correlated. They do not depend on each other. Strength does not always depend upon the size. Bigger does not mean stronger. You can also say the nature always has a way to kill everyone. You can say there is always a bigger fish. Which is a saying in the Western world where they say that there is always a person who is better than you or who is stronger than you. And this saying is very famous in the corporate world. There's one more saying that everyone's time comes, which means everyone will face death ultimately. So everyone should embrace humility instead of arrogance. No one should be arrogant because everyone has to suffer an end. Does not matter how powerful or how wealthy or how privileged you are or how privileged someone is. Time humbles everyone. Everyone faces the end. So you can say one of the opinion or one of the idea which you get from this is you should be humble. Now this kind of examples are best reflected in Panchatantra stories. You might have read Panchatantra, where the thinker or the writer is taking support of social and natural events. And these events also include animals who can talk. So the animals have been used as characters to teach some moral value or some moral idea. So similarly, we have seen how natural events like death can be used to justify the idea, and the philosophers use these justifications for their ideas. Social incidents can be used. Let us say person in a society has done bad deeds all over his life and near to the end of his life he has suffered bad fate. Such kind of social incidents that a bad person has to face a bad future. Such incidents can be used by the philosopher to justify his or her own ideas. Similarly, the religious texts are used by the religious philosophers, and their ideas on spirituality are justified by the religious text. Similarly, the nature itself. We have seen how nature can be used to justify, or the tenets and the incidents in the nature are used by the philosophers to justify their ideas. What are the ideas? These are all the ideas. And these ideas are presented by the philosophers. And this food chain in the nature is used to justify these ideas. And the philosophers take support of the nature itself to justify such ideas. Now let us look at few terms, understanding which is pretty helpful when dealing with philosophical ideas, because most of these ideas revolve around these basic terms like morals and moral values and moral truth and reasoning. So let us first look at morals. Now, morals are personal rules to judge something right or wrong. Personal rules. This personal word is very important here. It is a person's self belief, someone's self belief, and his own understanding whether some action is wrong or right. Let us say there is a poor person. For example, let us say there is a poor person, he is hungry and he is begging for food. Now, another man passes by who is a fruit seller, and fruit seller ignores this man. Now, you would generally consider that this is wrong. This is one of the rules you believe, that you should always help a needy or a poor as per your ability. This is what I also believe. And you, as a student, might also believe the same thing. Now, this man was hungry. The fruit seller should have given him some fruit. The fruit seller was capable, but he ignored. Now, this belief of yours is your moral, that you should have helped the poor because he was hungry, and this is your moral. So similarly, such set of beliefs, such beliefs, such set of number of such beliefs that you have are your own morals, personal, and these are personal. These morals are personal. Now there can be different reasons for what you believe. Maybe your parents imparted these. Maybe the source was your parents. Your parents taught you this. They might have taught you such morals like always respect your elders, you should never lie, you should never steal, don't use abusive words, and such other morals. Or it is because you are compassionate. It is your emotional side. You are compassionate. You are empathetic. Now, empathetic means you can place yourself in other shoes. That is, you can imagine yourself in other people's situation and you feel the same pain or you may feel the same hunger. And that is why you want to help this person. Or it may be because the society you live in believes in these morals because of the society. Generally, the society believes in these things, that you should respect your elders, you should never lie, you should always help the needy and poor. And you adopted it from the society because you are the part of the society, and the society believes in these morals and you adopted these morals. They have become now your morals. These morals are your personal, individual morals that you believe in. Now, let us say that in this example, you are not just considering this action of the fruit seller where he ignored the poor. You are not just considering this action as wrong, but you are such moved or affected by it that you decided that whenever you see a poor and needy, you will help. So you will always help a poor person, needy. And it is your decision. It is a kind of resolve, a resolution that you have made. Now there is a difference. Previously you believed that the fruit seller was wrong, and one of your morals told you, or with the help of that moral, you decided that it was wrong. It is wrong in your eyes. But it affected you this time, and you have made a resolution. You have decided to strictly follow this belief, which means that you have now valued this belief. This moral is valuable for you. Now, this belief that you value so much is your moral value. Now, when something is valuable in your life, your actions and choices are affected by that thing. Let us say that your dresses are valuable for you. So it will reflect in your habits. For example, you won't sit on a chair until you are satisfied that it is clean. You would be careful in the way you walk. You would always arrange your dresses in a tidy way. You would pull your sleeves up before eating to save the sleeves from any stain. Overall, you won't behave rash or chaotic normally. Similarly, when a rule or a moral is valuable for you, it will reflect in your habits and demeanor and your life choices. These morals are so valuable to you that it directs your actions. Therefore, these morals are moral values. So in simple words, moral value is a moral belief which you have, which you value in your life. Now take a little time, pause the video and try to take this concept slowly. You should be having a good grasp of this concept. There are subtle differences, so go back, watch again, and try to grasp it and take it in. And then we can proceed further. I hope you would have taken my advice, so let's proceed further. Now, moral values can be valued or respected or desired by society as a whole also. So, apart from you taking such resolution, instead of this individual, the whole society, the different people generally have a belief or they value such morals. For example, the society can believe that everyone should be compassionate. They should, everyone should stand against the evil. There is a common belief that violence is an evil and such other moral values. You can also see this in real life around you that if someone is honest, a person who is honest is respected by the people around him. The people would say that it is a kind of quality and should be respected. So, this is also a moral value because it is not just one action or a belief that the honest person has, but that person who is honest follows it strictly, and therefore it becomes a part of his character. So everything he does, his honesty is reflected in it. When we say the person is honest, it is not just because he was honest once. It is a part of his character, which means he values honesty. And honesty is one of the moral, which is valued and respected by the society too. So moral value can also be uh, respected or desired by the society as a whole. Few people in the society may not like it or may not value it as much, but we will consider that the majority of the people value these morals, and that is why the moral values represent the society as well, because these moral values are respected by the society. Now another term is reasoning. So people in a good society or a civilized society, they respect high moral values. They would respect honesty. They would respect a person who is honest. So in good society, honesty is a moral value, and it is a general thing to say. You have seen a society or a group where this honesty is not respected. For you and for me, such groups and such societies are not civilized societies. But in a good society, a person who is honest is always respected. This quality is respected. Now let us try to dig a bit deep as to why would a civilized society hold honesty as a desired and respectable characteristic. So let us take a case where the people in society, in a society, people in certain society are not honest. They are not honest with each other. Now what would happen? Because they are not honest with each other, there won't be mutual trust among them. Loss of mutual trust. They won't trust each other because the people know no one is honest. So why would they trust each other? Now, this loss in mutual trust brings or leads to failure of any system or organization. Now, for even a simple task, for the simplest task, if some system has been made or some organization has been made, it will fail. So let's take an example. Let us take that people have gathered together to construct a road. And to construct this road, different responsibilities have been distributed among different people from this society. These responsibilities have to be distributed. Someone has to deal with collecting the funds. Funds have to be collected, and there would be someone who has to look after the expense. Some other person will have to look after the construction of the road. So, construction of the road. Someone has to look after the materials, the quality of the materials, whether the materials are of good quality. Someone has to take care of maintenance later. Now, all of these responsibilities needed to be divided in the society. For example, let us say there is no government, there is just the society. The society has to build a road. Now, among them, they can't work out as an organization until and unless there is a mutual trust among them. And this division of responsibility happens because the whole of the society as a group can't be present for everything. Although building a road is a group work, it is not possible for every member of the society to be present for each of these jobs at all times. And because of this reason that there is no mutual trust among the people in the society, first of all, there would not be a consensus among the people for anything. And even if somehow a consensus develops, they will always want that everything happens in front of everyone. Now, this is almost impossible. By any chance, if some person is absent during any task, this work won't progress. And if it progresses with someone being absent, there could be disputes later. So, if there is no mutual trust, then this organization won't work. This road will never be built. No further development happens, people turn out to be unhappy. And this condition will lead to loss of aspiration. This kind of society cannot aspire to achieve anything as a whole. And it will lead to lack of peace. Lack of peace. A feeling of uneasiness, a feeling of suspicion will always be present in such societies. And such people cannot find any peace. So, there are some fundamental moral values which are unavoidable or indispensable for any society. And how have we proved that these moral values should exist or should be a part of the society? And why are they moral values? This we have discovered after going through an example from which we got a reason that if people are not honest, there will be loss of mutual trust and failure of any system or organization. Loss of aspiration will be the result of this. The society won't develop further and there will be lack of peace. This will in turn destroy the whole society. So we have seen that through reasoning, we can find out or we can justify the importance of morals. Because of these reasons, people should be honest. The society should value honesty. And today, you see most of us are peace loving. We are aspirational human beings. We aspire something to achieve in our life. We seek happiness. So naturally, we value such moral values like honesty, compassion, the feeling of love, the feeling of brotherhood, truth, punctuality, discipline are the values which we, as the member of a society or civilization, value. And we can also justify these moral values by reasoning. We can always find out reasons as to why we need these moral values. So, this is reasoning. You will also see that ultimately the reasoning, which is a way to justify these moral values, lead to few ultimate reasons like survival, and happiness. It can also be comfort. So you can see when people live in groups, the chance of survival increases. When they are in groups, survival's chance increases. So it is natural for them to form society, and that is why humans are known as social animals. One other reason for the people to accept a moral value is because it gives them happiness, or it leads the society to be better or more happy, more peaceful. It provides people comfort, or the moral values helped the society or help the people to achieve their aspirations. Along with this, there can be many other aims. So we can always, at the end, follow the moral values to its aim. Why people are following these moral values? Now, later in this lecture, when we discuss about natural law theory, we will see that according to natural law theory, there is a concept or there is a principle where it says that there are some moral truths which are inherent to humans, and these can be discovered through reasons. So, for that particular thing, it is very important to understand the concept of reasoning. Now, let us look at moral truths. As we have seen that generally society would regard and respect honesty. So, honesty and let us say trust are very essential elements for the existence of the society. Essential for the society, for the existence of the society. Now, this is a statement which is believed by the people in the society, and therefore you can see that you don't need a government or a ruler to make it a law. It does not need to be written. No government or any kind of ruler or system will have to ever make it a law. No government has ever asked people to follow this rule, but people believe it on their own. These principles are known as moral truths. So, this principle that honesty and trust is essential for the society. So, people should be honest, which is essential for the existence of the society. Now, it is one of the statement, one of the principle, or one of the rule, and it is considered or regarded as a truth that cannot be avoided. That is why this kind of statements or this such kind of truths believed by the society are known as moral truths. Now, honesty is a moral. If it is valued by the society or an individual, it becomes moral value. And when such moral values are combined with their effects, moral values and the effects, when you take them together and a rule is formed out of it, the rule is that honesty and trust are essential for the existence of the society. This is a moral truth? In simple terms, we can see that people value something, they value something becomes moral value, and this moral value can be justified with a reason, justified by a reason. Now, based on this moral value, some rules can be formed, and people believe that these rules are truth, and these rules are known as moral truths. For example, there is a moral truth that each person has the duty or responsibility to take care of their children and also make them good citizens. You will see that no government rule is required for this. No government or no government is required for this. For this to be imposed for the people to follow this rule. Because if you don't do this, the society will collapse. The children may die. Even if they survive, they will be spoiled. They won't become the good citizen of the society, which leads to collapse of the society. Now you have seen that we have tried to establish using some reason. And what is our reasoning? That if you don't do this, there may be consequences, there will be effects, and it will lead to the collapse of the society. And no one wants the society to collapse because the existence of society supports our survivability. Now, keeping this in mind, let's proceed to natural law theory. According to this theory, there are some universal moral truths or principles, and these can be found across various regions, religions, race, culture, ethnicities, nations. These are common among them. And because they're common across the world and believed by the majority of people or majority of the societies, so these are known as universal moral truths. These are moral truths which are universal. For example, let us say the truth, a moral truth is that clean surroundings lead to clearer mind. Now it is a moral truth. Some societies believe this as a moral truth, but it may not be a universal moral truth. Some people who are messy and untidy but are still brilliant, they won't believe this moral truth. So there are exceptions. So such rules or such moral truths are not universal in nature. So you can see these principles or moral truths are common everywhere, and that is why they are known as universal moral truths. The theory also says that these universal moral truths are inherent in human nature. Inherent, which means they exist as a part of human nature. They don't have to be imparted by any outside agent or some other people. Therefore, these are inherent. These are the part of human nature. And these can be discovered through reason. Discovered. These are not invented. These can be only found out. Found out through reasons. As we have discussed before, how we can reason for the existence of some moral truths and why they are important. So this theory says that such universal moral truths cannot be invented. They can only be found out because they are inherent. They are not made. And we have seen how for the existence of society certain moral truths are very important, that even societies can't exist. So you don't invent such rules for the societies to function. We, as human beings, have naturally grown ourselves in societies. We have grouped together naturally, and therefore, it is in human nature. These morals are human nature, and we, as the part of the society, have been following these moral truths or universal moral truths. Maybe we were not aware of these qualities and values when we came together as a society, but later we realized that these morals are what led us to develop into societies. This theory also suggests that these principles do not need the recognition and permission from any governing body. Because these are inherent in human nature, we are born with it, so no recognition is needed, no permission is needed from any governing body. There is one more concept of moral realism which opposes this notion and says that natural laws are not discovered, they can be invented, but we don't have to study that theory. For us, as we are studying the Constitution of India, we have to see that our Constitution has inexplicitly borrowed the idea of natural law. Inexplicitly means it has not been exclusively mentioned, but it is present. So we will focus more on that. So you can see, because they are discoverable according to this theory and they cannot be invented, this gives the term natural. It means they are natural. So the whole theory is natural theory. It is about natural law. What is the natural law? These tenets are the natural law. So natural law theory provides that these all are natural laws. Now this theory also suggests that there are some obligations. Obligations means some responsibility. You are supposed to do something. Some obligations, some moral principles, and there are also some rights which are part of human nature, which could be ascertained by the reasoning. As we have seen, you can use reasons and you can ascertain or justify the importance and inherent nature of these moral truths or principles by reasoning. And along with this, the theory also suggests that human beings have few inherent rights. Just because they are human being, they are the part of society, they have these rights, and these rights are known as natural rights. Because they are natural, they have been given to the human by the nature itself. Now this law also states that any laws made by humans which are violative or in opposition of the natural law, which means in opposition of the inherent moral principles and these natural rights, are unjust laws. Unjust means that such laws which are in opposition of natural laws won't serve justice. Won't serve justice. Or won't do justice with the people. The concept of justice itself will be dealt with in upcoming lectures. But for now, just understand that natural law opposes any such laws which are made against these moral principles and the obligation and these natural rights of human beings. Now let us see the origin and further development of this idea of natural rights. Stoicism was the philosophical movement. This movement started in Greece and later continued in Rome or in Roman Empire. This philosophical movement was very prevalent in 4th century BC. 4th century BC. The philosophers under this movement were known as Stoics. So Stoics were the philosophers. The Stoics were also the followers of this philosophical movement. So the Stoics held that no one was a slave by nature. Slavery was an external condition juxtaposed to the internal freedom of the soul. Juxtapose simply means to place two different things together, side by side, which are different from each other, to show that how these two are contrasting to each other or how different they are from each other. Stoics say that the slavery was an external condition. It didn't belong to the human being's nature. It was external condition which was imposed or juxtaposed, which means there is freedom of soul, but the body was made a slave, which were kept side by side. Or in simple terms, the slavery was imposed on someone. Stoics say that the soul is free from this concept or this condition of slavery. Sui juris means the right of a person to manage his own affairs, that he is responsible for his actions, that he has full right to be able to decide what his actions would be. So, in this case, according to Stoicism, the soul is free from any external conditions like slavery, and therefore the person has the right to manage his own affairs. And the Stoics say that this internal freedom of the soul is in contrast with the slavery, that they are very different from each other. They cannot be kept together. So the Stoics say that soul is free and therefore naturally the body should be free. But the body was forcefully enslaved by external force, which is against the nature. Now this is the earliest representation of the idea of natural rights. Now Seneca was a Stoic philosopher of Rome. He was born in ancient Rome. He lived around 4th BC, not 4th century BC, 4th BC. Now he also talks about slavery. He says that it is a mistake to imagine that slavery pervades a man's whole being. Pervades means spread across, or here you can say it does not dominate a man's whole being. Man as an individual is not bound by the slavery. It does not define the man's being, it does not define a man's character or his life. He says that the better part of him is exempt from it, which means that the beliefs, the aspirations, man's own character, his mind, and his emotion cannot be enslaved, and they are exempt or free from slavery. The body indeed is subjected and in power of a master, but the mind is independent. He says that you can enslave the body, but not the mind. He further says, and indeed is so free and wild that it cannot be restrained even by the prison of the body, wherein it is confined. He talks about mind that it is free. It is so wild that it cannot be bound even by the prison of this body. The mind is confined in the body, for sure, but the mind is free from the body. You can restrict a person's movements, but how will you restrict his mind, which wanders wherever it wants? It is simply to say that the mind and thoughts cannot be bound, or they are naturally free. They cannot be bound. Cannot be bound. Similarly, Martin Luther in 16th century AD. This Martin Luther is different from Martin Luther King. Martin Luther was a German theologian who studied religion, or he was also a priest. He says that every man is responsible for his own faith, and he must see it for himself that he believes rightly. He says that every man has his own faith, and he is responsible for what he believes. and it is up to him to look after what he believes is right or wrong. It is his own decision. He says, as little as another can go to hell or heaven for me, so little can he believe or disbelieve for me, and as little as he can open or shut heaven or hell for me, so little can he drive me to faith or unbelief. So he is keeping himself as the subject here. He says that no other person can go to heaven or hell for the deeds done by him. No other person can believe something or disbelieve for him. No other person can stop him from either going to heaven or hell based on what he did. Whether he has faith or he doesn't believe is up to him. No other external authority or any person can make him believe something that he doesn't believe. He further says that the belief or unbelief is a matter of everyone's conscience. And since this is no lessening of the secular power, the latter should be content and attend to its own affairs, and permit men to believe one thing or another, as they are able and willing, and constrain no one by force. Now he says that such beliefs or disbelief depends on the person's conscience, and therefore any secular power or government should not interfere or intervene. The latter, in this case, the secular power, should be content and attend to its own affairs. The government or the ruler or any power should not interfere in an individual's own beliefs. The government should attend its own affairs and permit men to believe one thing or another, which means the government should always permit each individual to believe whatever he wants to believe, whatever they are able to believe, whatever they are willing to believe, and the government should constrain no one by force. So you can see the common concept of these rights which people have, and you can see they are common even among the people who are religious, like Martin Luther, and other who are not religious. Martin Luther talks about religion and faith in some religion or religious concepts. Stoicism doesn't talk about religion, talks about the social beliefs, but still the same concept of rights that are inherent to nature, inherent to human beings, are common in both of them. In the same series, there was an English philosopher, Thomas Hobbes. He worked in 17th century. He was a political theorist. His works are based on the politics and its ideas, which means the ideas on the relation between the government and the governed. He says that the essential natural right, which he says among human natural right, was to use his own power as he will himself for the preservation of his own nature, that is to say, of his own life, and consequently of doing anything, which is his own judgment, and the reason he shall conceive to be the aptest means thereunto. So you can see the word natural right, which Thomas Hobbes describes as the right of a person to use his own power for the preservation of his own nature, the preservation of his own character, of what he is or what he thinks of himself. So he argues that the person has the right to preserve or to conserve his own characteristics, his own beliefs, his own nature, which he says is his own life. He has the right to use his own power to save his own life. And as a consequence, of doing anything, whatever a man wants and wills to do to save his own life, and it should be his own judgment, and he has the right to reason it for himself. He may have his own reason to do whatever he wants to do, to live his own life, and whatever he thinks which is best for him to do. Aptest means the best or suitable in a particular situation. So here Thomas Hobbes says that a person should be free to do whatever he wants in order to survive, in order to live. He can develop or he can find his own reasons as to why he is doing what he is doing. And he says this is one of the natural rights of human beings. Similarly, John Locke in 17th century prescribed three natural rights like life, liberty, and estate. This translates to right to life, right of a person to enjoy his own liberty, and right to manage his own affairs and his own property, estate, his own house, his own farm, his own property. Later, in upcoming lectures, we will see that such ideas are directly taken or borrowed and adopted in the Indian Constitution and American Constitution as basic human rights or basic rights. In India, in the Constitution of India, these are known as fundamental rights. Now, Ernst Cassirer, who was a German philosopher, in 20th century, says that there is at least one right that cannot be ceded or abandoned, which means which cannot be given up, which is the right to personality. A person has the right over his own personality. He says that if a man could give up his personality, he would cease being a moral being, which means he says that if a man gives up the right to be able to preserve this personality, he will no longer be a moral being, which means he would no longer be a human being with some moral values. He says that there is no pactum subjectionis. Now, this is a concept which we will learn later in detail. It is the concept under social contract theory. For now, just understand that whenever there is a system of government, people who are ruled by the government, according to the social contract theory, have given up few of their rights and have become the subject of the government. The people have given up few of their freedom, and in turn, the government is responsible to ensure that people enjoy few rights. It is like a contract between the government and the population, and that is what social contract theory says. So Ernst Cassirer says that no act of submission. So he says that under this social contract theory, a person can never give up himself or his personality and become a slave of the state. The state means government here. That a person can never give up his own being to become a slave of the government. For by such an act of renunciation, he would give up that very character which constitutes his nature and essence. He says that if such a thing happens, if you become the slave of the government, if you renunciate or you renounce your very character which defines who you are, which means you have renounced your nature and you will lose to be a human being. So, in short, if people give up their right to possess some personality or their morals, losing which they will lose their character, then they will no longer be human beings. They would be like other beings, like trees, animals, birds, etc., who do not have morals. Therefore, it is very important for one to preserve his or her personality because it is what makes you human. Now let us see how these ideas by different philosophers inspired the American freedom struggle and the leaders of this struggle. Before independence of America, America wasn't a country, but there were different colonies ruled by the British. There were 13 colonies. These colonies were under British. During the freedom struggle, these colonies declared themselves independent, independent of the British rule. And to ratify this independence, they signed a document. This document was known as American Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson was the primary writer or the author of this document. Now, in his own words, he says that we, the people of America, hold these truths to be self evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Here, similar to John Locke's three natural rights of life and liberty, instead of right to property or right to estate, Thomas Jefferson mentions the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit means the effort by an individual to find happiness. He says that all the men are created equal. No one is created to be superior to someone or inferior to someone. He says that everyone has been endowed by their Creator. The Creator has given everyone certain unalienable rights. Unalienable, which means you can't separate these rights from the individual. Among these rights are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now he says further that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. He says that to secure these rights, governments are formed. The main aim of the government is to secure these rights. And these governments are instituted and formed by the men. He says that the power of the government comes from the consent of the governed, which means the consent of the people who are being governed. That is the source of the power of the government. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, destructive of this condition, whenever a government is unable to ensure these rights, then it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness, which means whenever the government is not able to ensure these rights, or the government acts against these principles, then the people have the right to abolish such a rule. They are talking about the British rule, and to institute new government and to form a new government. The government whose basis are these principles, which will ensure their safety and happiness. And such a form of the government organizing its power in such form, which means the government is formed in such way which most likely would lead to safety and happiness of the people. So here you have seen how the concepts of natural rights, which have been developed over centuries, have affected and inspired the freedom struggle in America. Now, these ideas, such as natural rights, are not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution of India. But using an example, we will see how Supreme Court, through its judgments, have time and again used these ideas as reference, considering them as the foundation or the basis of different rights that are mentioned in the Constitution. For example, fundamental rights. The ideas behind the fundamental rights, as recognized by the Supreme Court, are these ideas that we have discussed, and such other ideas which, over the time, by different philosophers, have been thought about and developed. So, as an example, let us look at a famous case, Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, 1978. So, within the judgment, there are 3 or 4 paragraphs where natural law and natural rights were mentioned by these judges. So, let us look at them. Within the judgment, the judge says that the identification of natural law with divine will or dictates of God may have, quite understandably, vanished at a time when men see God in the highest qualities inherent in the nature of man himself. Which means the idea that the natural law or divine will of God would have lost its justification when the idea that developed that God is nothing but it is the representation or manifestation of the highest qualities inherent in nature of the man. Courts in our country are secular institutions, so they don't follow any religious representation of God, and that is why they have a very different concept of God. Therefore, our approach to understand the Constitution should also be secular as well. So we can say in the modern times where we see God as the manifestation of the qualities of man himself, which is to say the highest qualities inherent in the nature of man himself, which means that the idea that the highest qualities in the man, in the nature of the man, which are morals, moral values, the features, the characteristics like compassion, goodwill, or social well being, or selflessness, lack of arrogance, men have started to look at these highest qualities as the representation of God. So, when we see that the God is no entity that is separately existing somewhere else, rather, they are inherent in the nature of man, the highest qualities in the nature of man. Therefore, this idea that natural law is divine will of God, this loses its justification. There is no more a divine God according to this idea. So there is no justification that such a natural law exists. But the idea of natural law as a morally inescapable postulate of a just order. Order means there are rules and regulations, which is opposite of chaos. And this just order means rules and regulations are not biased or they are not in favor of some individual or a group of individual or some class of the society or particular gender in the society. They are fair for everyone. So for such a just order, there are these natural law which are morally inescapable or unavoidable. You cannot avoid these natural laws. Therefore, recognizing the inalienable and inherent rights of all men, which also includes women. Men is a word used for both the genders. Inalienable, you cannot separate men from these rights, and inherent, not given by anyone, but present in the men, in the human being themselves. And the men are equal before the law. So, to understand this line, let us say natural law as unavoidable necessity for a order which serves justice. This natural law recognizes the rights of all men, these unavoidable rights of all men, rights of all men, where every one of them are looked upon as equals before the law. According to the natural law, everyone in the eyes of this natural law are equals. Therefore, the natural law recognizes that each and every one of them have inalienable and inherent rights. And such a natural law which recognizes all the rights is important for a just order. Further, the judge says that it is embedded in our constitution, embedded or included in our constitution, the Constitution of India. And the judge does not think that we can reject Blackstone's theory of natural right as totally irrelevant for us today. Blackstone was other philosopher, and we will look at some excerpts from his theory and his idea for natural rights. And the judge says that his idea of natural rights are not irrelevant for us today. So let us look at a summary or try to get an idea of what Blackstone thought of. So Blackstone propounded in his philosophy of natural and absolute rights that these absolute rights of man, considered as free agent, endowed with discernment to know good from evil, and with power of choosing those measures which appear to him to be most desirable, are usually summed up in one general appellation and denominated the natural liberty of mankind. Here he says the man is considered a free agent and he is endowed with or given certain knowledge to differentiate, to discern, to differentiate between good from evil, to differentiate between good and evil. And he has the power to choose such ways that he thinks fit. What are the ways? Ways to differentiate between good and evil. The ways in which they try to differentiate between good and evil. They have different ideas to differentiate between good and evil. Different people have different definitions of good, different definitions of evil. And Blackstone says that these knowledge or this intelligence of being able to differentiate between good and evil are endowed or given to each and every man, and absolute rights of such a man who has been given this knowledge are usually summed up in one general appellation, in one general concept, and the concept is named as natural liberty of mankind. So this natural liberty is a group of different absolute rights which a man should have for him to be able to use his own knowledge to differentiate between good and evil. Because if he doesn't enjoy rights, if he is bounded, he won't be freely able to use his own mind or his own wisdom to choose what does he want to use as a way to differentiate between good and evil. Further, the natural liberty consists properly in power of acting as one thinks fit without any restraint or control unless by the law of nature. So this is the same thing as I mentioned, that liberty is a power of acting as one thinks fit without any restraint or control, without any boundation, until and unless the nature itself binds him. Being a right inherent in us by birth, and one of the gifts of God to man at his creation, when he endued him with the faculty of free will. He further supports that the God himself, when he created the man, also gave him the faculty, the gift of free will. But every man, when he enters into the society, gives up a part of his natural liberty as a price so valuable a purchase, and in consideration of receiving the advantages of mutual commerce, obliges himself to conform to those laws which the community has thought proper to establish. So Blackstone says that when a person becomes a part of the society, he gives up some part of his natural liberty, and this price is paid for some valuable purchase. And what is the valuable purchase? The purchase is mutual commerce, which means the man gives up his liberty, some part of his liberty, to be able to perform commerce with other members of the society. And he accepts to follow these laws made by the society or the community, which were properly thought out. The laws were properly thought out and made by the community. So within a society, a person enters or becomes a member. He wants to perform commerce or do business or to simply interact among the society. So for it, he will have to give up few of his liberties, few of his rights, and follow laws made by the society. These laws are made by the society so that society could function according to what society wants it to function like. It is a deal. You give up something, you get something in return. You give up your liberty, you get some advantages. And this species of legal obedience and conformity is infinitely more desirable than that will and savage liberty which is sacrificed to obtain it. Blackstone also calls that this obedience towards these laws and the agreement to follow these laws are more desirable for man rather than the will and savage liberty, which means the wild freedom which a man would enjoy when a person is not part of a society. Let us say he lives in an island. He can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to follow any rule. Let us say that island doesn't come under a nation, or there are no rules or laws or no foundation. He can act freely. But if he gives up certain liberties of himself that he was enjoying, he can be the part of a society, and the advantages that he get becoming a member of the society are infinitely more desirable. For no man that considers a movement would wish to retain the absolute and uncontrolled power of doing whatever he pleases, the consequence of which is that every other man would also have the same power, and then there would be no security to individuals in any enjoyment of the life. Which means that if this uncontrolled power or uncontrolled freedom to be able to do whatever one pleases becomes the norm of some society, then every other man would also have the same power, which means each and everyone can do whatever they want. There is no foundation. In such a condition, there will be no security to individuals. So anyone can do anything to you. They can encroach upon your property, they can take your life, they can interrupt your work because there are no laws, and therefore you won't be able to enjoy your life. There is no certainty. There is no one to ensure that nobody would hurt you. Therefore, it is very important to have some laws imposed upon the society. And from here, we can understand the difference between freedom and liberty. Let us say a person is living in an island which is not a part of any nation. The man lives alone with his family, and therefore the island doesn't have any rules and regulations or law. And therefore, he is free to do whatever he wants to do. He can dig up any part of the island. He can erect any structure wherever he wants. He can kill as many animals he wants to. He can cut as many trees he wants to. That is freedom. But when a person becomes the member of a society or becomes a subject to some law, then according to the law, he enjoys some freedom. And he just not only enjoys this freedom, the government, the authority who is responsible to impose these laws are also responsible to ensure that people enjoy these freedoms without someone else encroaching on those freedom. So liberties are freedom enjoyed by a person who is subject to some law, and the authority is responsible for imposing the law. Authorities ensure that people enjoy these freedoms. So in short, liberties are freedoms which are given to people under the law. and these freedoms are also protected by the law. These are terminologies just to differentiate. Therefore, we can say freedom is just unbounded or unrestricted. Let us proceed further. Blackstone further says that political or civil liberties of a member of the society is no other than the natural liberty. He says that the political liberty or civil liberties of a member of the society are the natural liberties so far restrained by human laws as is necessary and expedient for the general advantage of the public, which means the natural liberties restricted by laws for the advantage, general advantage of the public are, in other terms, called civil liberties or political liberties. So let us summarize what he says. He says that because man is a free agent and he has been given the intelligence or knowledge to be able to differentiate between good and evil, and for him to be able to do that, he has been also given some rights, some absolute rights. But when he becomes the member of a society for some advantage or in the return of some advantages, he gives up some of these liberties. Liberty means this savage liberty. He is talking about the freedom. In modern time, we have distinguished between the idea of freedom and liberty, and therefore the restrictions on these liberties for the general advantage of public take the form of civil liberties. He further says that there are such three principal or primary articles: the right of personal security, the right of personal liberty, and the right of private properties. He says that an infringement of one of or other of these important rights amount to abridging man's natural free will, which means if you infringe one of these rights, you are infringing a man's free will, and the preservation of these rights may justly be said to include the preservation of our civil immunities in their largest and most extensive sense. Which means if you preserve these three rights of each and every individual in the society, you are preserving their civil immunities in the most extensive way. And then he also defines what is right of personal security, which consists not only his life, his limbs, his body, but his health and his reputation, and also that he should enjoy this right in a legal way and uninterrupted way. So personal security means security of his reputation also, his health also, along with his life. Along with the personal security, other right is personal liberty, which consists to have right to locomotion or changing one's situation, moving to whatever place that one wants to, without any fear of being imprisoned or without boundation, until and unless there is some law which defines that you have done something, and according to the law, because of your actions, you are restricted. Until then, a person should be able to enjoy this right. So this is personal liberty. The third absolute right he talks about is right of property, which he says consists of free use, enjoyment and disposal of all of a person's acquisition without any control except by the law of the land. So in the same way, as we have seen, that except that there is a law which stops the person from enjoying his control over his property, a person should be able to enjoy the free usage, which is to say that he should be able to use his property without any infringement or without any restriction, without any boundation or disposal of his acquisition, or to give up his acquisitions. The only condition is if there is a law, the law can restrict. In simple words, you should not do anything illegal when using that property. Other than it, you can enjoy your property in whatever way you want to. Further, judge says that he has reproduced Blackstone's ideas, which may appear little old, quaint, or irrelevant in the age of irreverence, because modern jurisprudence means the modern conception of law, the modern perspective or modern understanding of the law, conceives of all rights as relative or as products of particular socio-economic order. So according to modern jurisprudence, rights are relative, they are not absolute. Relative means according to the socio-economic condition of the society, rights are different. For example, our constitution provides for some rights for the minorities because of our social history, because of our demography, our mixture of different sections of the society. This right for minorities may not exist in some other country. Similarly, some rights are based on the economic condition of the society. Let us say some country is well developed that it can generate employment because of the strength of its market. So there people can be given the right to employment. It is not possible in India. You cannot ensure that each and every individual gets some kind of employment. You can still give people the right to food, but the right to employment cannot be given to people because we don't have a vibrant economy which can support each and every individual by granting him or her some kind of employment. Therefore, the judge says that rights are relative, depends upon socio-economic orders. He says, but still, the idea that man has certain inherent, natural, inalienable human rights goes back to very origin of human jurisprudence. Even though modern jurisprudence consider rights as relative, but there are some natural, primordial, inalienable human rights which go as early as the origins of human jurisprudence. The understanding of justice, the understanding of law, when first appeared or first originated, considered that there are natural human rights which are inalienable. He further says that this idea is found even in Greek philosophy, and therefore, even though we have advanced today to become a higher civilization and more enlightened, we cannot fall behind something that is known as personal liberty, and this name was given by Blackstone. So in simple words, even though we have developed into a modern society, an enlightened society, we cannot still disregard Blackstone's meaning of what personal liberty means. And he repeats what Blackstone says about personal liberty, which means the power of locomotion, the changing situation, or moving wherever one wants to, without imprisonment or restraint, unless by the due course of law, as we have seen before. Further, he goes to say that he thinks that the personal security and personal liberty recognized by Blackstone as natural law are embodied in Article 21 of the Constitution, which means natural law is a part of Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. Further, the judge refers to an old case and quotes a part of the judgment where the judge said that the fundamental rights, which are in part 3rd of the Indian Constitution, which are right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, and such other rights. These fundamental rights are the modern name for what have been traditionally known as natural rights. Further, the judge says that they are moral rights which every human being everywhere at all times ought to have simply because of the fact that, contrary to other beings, he is rational and moral. Just because they are rational and moral, human beings are supposed to have some moral rights, and the modern name for these moral rights is fundamental rights. So, looking at these examples, we have seen that even though the ideas are not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution, but they serve as the guiding principles, the foundation, the basis of these modern concepts such as fundamental rights. And every now and then, courts in our country refer back to the ideas developed by these philosophers who have written over the centuries about natural rights and natural law. And that is why it is very important to understand philosophy before delving into the constitution, until and unless we get a good grasp of these ideas and how they exist to serve the purpose of guiding the guardians of the constitution. So, this will be the end of the lecture. Thank you.